I want to define it for you for the sake of our conversation. A trigger is defined as something that affects your emotional state, often significantly, by causing extreme overwhelm or distress. A trigger affects your ability to remain present in the moment. So when someone says they're triggered, it means I was here, but then I heard a song, there was a smell, there was a memory, and though I was here physically, my mind, my spirit is snatched back to an experience that I had that most of the time is traumatic. Trigger, the word itself, is actually quite neutral, but most of the time when we're using the word trigger, it is to express a negative or adverse experience. So I did a little history on the word triggered. And what I learned is that this term actually started rising in the mental health space in the 1980s. It was a way of helping post-Vietnam veterans who had been diagnosed with PTSD to understand what was happening to them. How fitting is it that those post-Vietnam veterans have a word called triggered, as they are a part of the armed forces. And before it became a word that was used in the mental health space, it is a word that we generally correlate with a weapon. So I looked at that definition because I wanted to understand, how did we go from using the trigger on a weapon to then correlate it with what happens to our mental health? What I learned is that a trigger, in the mechanical sense, is a mechanism that actuates the function of a ranged weapon, such as a firearm, air gun, crossbow, or spear gun. The trigger is a mechanism that actuates the function. So when we look at it from the psychological standpoint and we look at it from the mechanical standpoint, what we have is that a trigger actuates the function of my past experience into my present. It actuates the function of that experience. The fear connected to it is now activated because I have been triggered. Whatever you experience, whatever function it had in your life, when you're triggered, it actuates that function. That's why you're defensive and nobody really said anything that bad to you. It's just that it actuated the function of that. That's why you start talking crazy. That's why you shut down. That's why you get angry before you can even control yourself, because the moment I'm triggered, it actuates the function of what happened to me. And so most of us, depending on where you are in your wellness journey, have two different angles at how we handle our triggers. Some of us choose to avoid them. I don't listen to that music, it triggers me. Can't talk to that person, it triggers me. I can't have that conversation. I can't go back home. I can't read that book. It triggers me. It reminds me of a season of my life where I wasn't at my best, where I was a victim, where I was hurt, where I was wounded. It actuates that function, and so I stay away from it. The only problem with this is that often when we avoid our triggers, we also avoid the healing connected to those moments. And so as uncomfortable as it is to stay in the resistance, to stay in the tension of being triggered, there is a beauty in doing that second option, and that is confronting your triggers. When we confront our triggers, we say to ourselves, I am not going back to that experience so that I can experience it again. I'm going back to that experience so that I can give it language, so that I can give it expression, so I can say now what I wasn't able to say then. I'm afraid, I'm hurt, I'm wounded, and so I could avoid the trigger, or I could dare to turn around and confront the trigger so that the trigger no longer dictates who I am anymore. It no longer dictates what's possible for me. It no longer dictates who I am in relationship with, or whether or not I have boundaries, because I am learning to confront my triggers. When you confront your triggers, you have the opportunity to not only just give it language, but you have the ability to say to that version of yourself what you weren't able to say then. Sometimes God allows us to be triggered, not because he wants to remind us of what we went through, but because you have a testimony now that you did not have then. And if you wouldn't mind being triggered, then you could go back to then and say, I got something to tell you about now that's going to make then easier to deal with. I wish I could say that the way I feel it in my spirit, but I just feel like somebody has something now that they needed back then, and you think because you have it now that you can't get it then. But I hear God saying, if you allow yourself to be triggered, then you can go back and tell that season where you felt like the weapon was prospering that in fact it did not prosper. You can go back and tell that shame, I know you thought I would never make it to the other side, but I messed around and found out I actually am fearfully and wonderfully made. I know you didn't think that I would ever recover from that abuse. I know you thought that I would always be damaged to good, but while I am triggered, I want to go ahead and let you know that I actually did find wholeness. I want to let you know that I actually did experience the presence of God. I actually want to go ahead and let you know that I built the family. I want to go ahead and let you know that I broke the generational curse. I want to go ahead and let you know that what happened then didn't change what God has for me now. Can I go deeper? Okay, I gotta take my shoes off because I feel like we're gonna get a little ugly today and I don't have time to be cute. When we moved back to Dallas in August, I got triggered. Oof. I love y'all, but I ain't like it. Something about moving away and becoming someone different that made me feel like if I came back here, maybe I was going backwards. And I'd come into church and I'd feel anxiety in my chest and I'd feel fear in my chest and I feel like people were staring at me and people were judging me, and I realized that what I was experiencing in this moment was not really true to what I was experiencing in this moment. I was being triggered from when I was 13 years old and pregnant. Oof. But I know something about now that I didn't know then. What I know now that I didn't know then is that this same anointing was inside of me when I was pregnant with my son. I just didn't know that when I was pregnant with him, I was also pregnant with this. And so when I started getting triggered, I said, I'm going to stay in the tension of being triggered in this moment because I know I'm not a 13-year-old pregnant girl anymore. And there is no way that God could transform my life and then bring me back to this moment to take me backwards. So God, if you got me standing in the place of the pain, then maybe I got something to inform the pain. Somebody's got some information for your past. Somebody's got a revelation about who you were. God says, not every trigger is meant to destroy you. Some triggers are meant to deliver you. Some triggers are meant to help you go back and get the pieces of yourself that you thought you would never get back again. God says some of these triggers are meant to help you heal. Oh God, I feel you, Moses. Trying to stay on subject. Ooh, Moses is evidence that God will send you back. He spends 40 years in Egypt, but he's got to leave Egypt because he keeps getting triggered in Egypt. Because I'm not quite Hebrew, I'm not quite Egyptian, and when I see the Hebrews, I get upset with the Egyptians, but the Hebrews won't accept me. He's torn in between these different identities, and so instead of staying there in the tension of the triggers, he leaves. And that's okay too. Because there are some moments where in order to truly heal, you do need to avoid the triggers that keep pulling you back. Sometimes you do need to change your playlist. Sometimes you do need to change the way you interact with others, especially when you're in a season where you're trying to figure out, who am I really? But after he's been in Midian for 40 years, the Lord appears to him. And the Lord appears to Moses with one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to send him back to the place where he was triggered. But this time, when he goes back, he's not going back the same. He's going back with an encounter that empowers him to be who God has called him to be. That's real good to me. Some of us want to go back to the place where we experience pain without an encounter. And that's why we get hurt and wounded again, because we haven't been empowered to really deliver ourselves or others. And so we go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But you can have an encounter with God that empowers you in such a way that when you go back, you don't have to worry about actually going back, because I'm not here to stay, I'm here to deliver. I'm not here to go back to who I used to be. I'm here to see if anybody wants to grow with me. I'm here to see if anybody wants to evolve with me. I'm here to see if anybody else wants to break out of this prison. I'm here to see if anyone else wants to be broken out of this oppression. When Moses goes back, he has to know within himself that I'm not the same person who left. And because I'm not the same person who left, when I go back, I got something to deliver that I could have never delivered had I stayed. I could have never, I don't know who that is for, but I hear like God is saying that there are some people who had to leave. But just because you had to leave, it doesn't mean that you have to stay gone. That sometimes God sends you back to a place after you have had an encounter that can stretch the capacity for what's possible for the people you left behind. I know we live in a culture, in society, where we think we have to leave everyone behind. But I'm here to let you know that sometimes you only leave them behind for a moment. And when you go, oh God, I feel like preaching in this place. When you go back to where you left, the people you left are not the same people you left anymore. You think they're stuck in their old ways, but baby, just like you changed, they changed. They're ready for something different. They're hungry for something beyond where they have been restricted. They want to know that there is a promised land somewhere out of there. I want to talk to somebody with survivor's guilt, because you are the one who got away. You are the one who changed everything. And I hear God saying you're the lone survivor for now, but you're only the lone survivor until I turn you into the deliverer. When I turn you into the deliverer, you will not be the only survivor any longer, because I'm going to send you back to unlock what's on the inside of them. I'm going to send you back to make them hungry for what happened to you. I'm going to send you back with an encounter and a revelation that shows them there's something better than this. There's a different way of being. There's a different way of proceeding. There's a different way of building a marriage. There's a different way of making money. There's a different way of building ministry. There's a different way of loving your wife. There's a different way of loving your husband. I don't know what you escaped from, but I hear God saying that you got to leave the door open. And sometimes you're going to be the Harriet Tubman of your family, the Harriet Tubman of your community, the Harriet Tubman of your generation, the Harriet Tubman of your school. I gotta send you back. You won't get stuck, but you're going back. You won't get lost, but you're going back. Because I got a mission. You left something behind. You left something behind. You left the revelation of who I am in the world. When you walked away from a part of your destiny. I don't know who I'm talking to in this place, but I hear God saying that I'm not allowing you to experience all of that revelation and all of that encounter so that you can keep it bottled up on the inside of you. That I'm letting you experience it, because there's going to come a time when everything I placed on the inside of you is going to have to pour out so that it can draw everybody to the very glory that changed your life. What's up? So, Moses starts going back. He's back with a revelation. You got to stop screaming like that, because it do something in my spirit. It make me think you're getting free. It make me think that you're okay with what happened to you. It make me think that you believe all things can work together for your good. You got to stop screaming like that. Something happened to me, girl. I've been preaching about revival. When somebody starts waking up like that, I feel like hell gets nervous. When somebody starts waking up like that, I feel like demons start trembling. When somebody starts waking up like that, I feel like a generational blessing comes through. So, Moses has got to go back. He's armed with a word. He's armed with a mission. He's armed with a purpose. He's got some confusion, but he's got to go back. He doesn't know how God's going to use him, but he's got to go back. He doesn't understand where the words are going to come from, but he's got to go back. He doesn't know how long the journey is going to be, but he's got to go back. And all he has is a promise. All he has is an encounter. All he has is a revelation. So the only thing he really has to do is resist the urge to not get stuck in confusion. I got the word. I've got the vision. I've even got the supporting cast necessary for me to do what God has called me to do. But I'm still confused, because I don't know how or why God would use me. But I'm going to go anyway. Can't get stuck in confusion when you have a command. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you're really going to be effective, you can't wait until you're clear on why it's you and how it's you and how long it's going to be you. Because if you're waiting for clarity, you may miss the anointing connected to the command. Some of us are moving confused. You think we look good. You think we have it all together. I'm telling you that some of us are just saying yes confused. Some of us are just saying yes with a shoulder shrug. Some of us don't know really how we made it over. We just know that we decided to keep on moving. Our legs got tired. They left us too. They betrayed us too. We didn't know where the resources were coming from either, but for some reason we just kept on moving because we knew we couldn't go back, and we knew when God said move, we had to move. And so we were moving confused, and the more we moved, the more he started clearing it up. Oh, so that's how you're going to do it. Oh, so that's who you're going to use. I'm moving, and when I'm moving, he's clearing my eyesight. When I'm moving, he's making my crooked path straight. When I'm moving, he's ordering my steps. Just when I don't know where it's gonna land, he says right there, step right there. preach right there, walk right there. I'm gonna tell you as you go. When you move, I'll give you the next step. When you obey, I'll give you the next step. What am I going to do with this ride? Just hang on to it. You'll see it. What am I going to do with this pain? Just hang on to it. Just wait. I'm going to use it. You want to do with this gift? Just hang on to it. I'm going to use it when I need it. I'm going to use it when the sea is ready. I'm going to use it. So, Moses shows us that confusion is not the end. Confusion only has as much power as you give it. When it's in comparison to the command, when it's in comparison to the call, when it's in comparison to what God has ordained for your life, when it is comparison to what God says only you can do in the earth, it doesn't mean that there will not be any confusion. It just means that confusion doesn't have to be the end. I don't know who you are in this room, but you're allowing confusion to be the end. And I hear God saying, if you would just move, I'll help you figure it out. Don't be afraid if it's the right move or the wrong move, or what if I get set back. God says, I know how to restore the years that the locusts have eaten. If you would just make a move, if you would just make a move, if you would just get out of your way of being, if you would just get out of your comfort zone, if you would just get out of protecting yourself and trust that I'm going to protect you, that I'll never leave you nor forsake you, if you would just... Oh. Oh, God. So, y'all killing me coming to this altar. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Somebody's coming back. Oh, God. Y'all killing me. Y'all killing me. Y'all killing me. Y'all killing me making a move. I chose this text. I chose this text because my disciples are stuck in confusion. My disciples who were walking with Jesus, who saw the miracles, who understood the power, are now stuck in a place of confusion. Because how could the man I was following go through this level of trauma, this level of shame, this level of vulnerability? I've seen him flip over tables. I've seen him heal the sick. It doesn't make sense how he would just get on this cross and die, like die for real, like he's in the tomb and now he's not in the tomb. It doesn't make sense anymore. So when Jesus is resurrected, he doesn't just go on a victory stroll. He makes it a point to go back to his disciples, because his disciples don't look like what he left. You're not walking in the same level of faith. You're not walking with the same level of belief. You're confused, and I even told you this was going to happen, but you still are confused. I told you that I was going to get on the cross, that the Son of Man would be crucified, but that he would come back 3 days later. It's almost as if you forgot what I told you, that I told you I was going to take care of that child, that I told you that I was going to bring the resources. You're acting like you forgot. You acted like you forgot. So Jesus starts walking with the disciples. He starts walking at their pace. He brings the conversation down to their level, because God knows how to speak the language of where you are. Church people talk the language of where you should be. Church people talk the language, how could you give up after all that? We serve a Jesus who knows how to meet you at your level. I know how to talk to you from that place of shame. I know how to talk to you from that place of fear. You can't hear God's voice because you keep hearing your daddy's voice. You can't hear God's voice because you keep hearing your mama's voice. You can't hear God's voice because you keep hearing the rumors. But up underneath all of that, there is a still small voice that says, I'm still with you. There's a still small voice that says you're fearfully and wonderfully made. There's a still small voice that says, what if they hire you? What if they fire you? Man shall not live by bread alone, but out of every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. What I learned is Jesus finds the disciples when they're triggered and confused and uncertain and afraid. But he also has another trigger that can help get them back to the space of faith. So he's walking where they're walking. That's why people talk about, well, Jesus sat with sinners and Jesus did this and Jesus did that. Yeah, but Jesus had a mission while he was doing it. Jesus had a purpose while he was doing it. I can talk your level because I know how to bring you up. Some of us can't talk on that level because we'll get brought back down to that level. But when Jesus talks on that level, he is not concerned with whether or not they will affect his divinity. He is God Almighty. He understands that when I touch you, the only thing that can happen is deliverance. When I sit with you, I don't become any more dirty because I am so holy that when I sit with you, you become worried about how did he become so holy. You get curious about who he is. So, Jesus says to the disciples, this is my version. Yeah, this is my version. He says, I know you're confused. I know you're concerned. I know you don't know how it's going to work out. But he takes them back to history. And he says, oh, you slow of heart to believe. Oh, foolish one. Do you not remember from Moses up until the prophets that I always covered you? Do you not remember from Moses all the way up through the prophets down to myself that you used to be hungry, not for information, not for a man, not for a job, but you were hungry for glory. And if you would ever get back to the space where you were hungry for glory, you wouldn't be hungry for information. You would seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all other things would be added unto you. You want information. God says the information is behind the glory. The information is behind the worship. The information is behind the sacrifice. The information is behind the surrender. The information is behind the obedience. Don't just ask me for what you want. Ask me for me. Don't just ask me for what you want. Ask me for me. Because if you get me, you get everything. He triggers them. He triggers them. He triggers them. He said, I got a glory trigger. You got a fear trigger, but I got a glory trigger. I'm going to take you back to when you were hungry. I'm going to take you back to the generational hunger. I'm going to take you back. Somebody's here. And they say, how do I go back when I'm new here in the first place? Some of us have some faith to pull from. Some of us have some history to pull from. But there's somebody in this room never seen nobody walk with God. Somebody in this room never seen anybody be hungry for worship. Not everybody is a church girl. Not everybody is somebody who had a praying grandmother. God says, I got them covered, Sarah, because in Jeremiah 1:5 I said, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. I sanctified you. I set you apart. So when I trigger you back, I'm not taking you back to a place you've been. I'm taking you back to a place you don't even remember. I'm taking you back to what I knew in heaven about you. I'm taking you back to the reason I put you in your mother's womb. I'm taking you back to why I said the earth needs you in it. I'm taking you back to what I formed, what I knew, what I sanctified. I'm triggered. I'm triggered. That's why you at this altar, because you're triggered. But this time I'm not triggered by fear. This time I'm not triggered by shame. I feel like God messed around and pulled the glory trigger. And now I'm getting triggered back to what he knew before he formed me in my mother's womb. I feel like I got triggered back to a space. Glory's got a trigger too. God's got a trigger too. You stuck on what happened. We got to go to therapy because you got to get past that. Because when you get past what happened, you'll see what was established before you were even born. I'm going to go back to my message. But I got to tell you this. For about the last year or so, gotten this weird revelation from God. If I'm honest, I thought the reason why God used me is because I got pregnant at an early age. That was the thing that turned everything in my favor. This is why God uses me, is because I went through this pain. But God's been whispering in my ear that this was always who you were. I just make all things work together for your good. You think you needed that to become who you were. God says, no, you were always that. I just used everything the enemy meant for evil, and I turned that thing for good, because it will never change my bottom line. My bottom line is you're blessed. My bottom line is you're anointed. My bottom line is no weapon formed against you will prosper. My bottom line is that you will shake the earth. My bottom line is that generations will call you blessed. My bottom line is that when you prophesy, things happen in the earth. So, Jesus, he triggers their hunger for glory. You just get hungry for my presence. Get hungry for glory. Not information, not closure, not even forgiveness. Just get hungry for the presence. And I know that the disciples got hungry for God's presence, because even when Jesus tried to leave, they constrained him. Because now you're feeling something in me that I haven't felt in a long time. You can't leave me, I'm still hungry. You can't go anywhere, I'm still hungry. He triggers their hunger. So he goes in with them. Jesus. And he sits with them. He says, I know they're hungry. They still don't know it's him. They just know something's happening to them where they can't let him go. And he does the thing that triggers, we would say it jogs their memory. But I'm going to go even deeper than that. He triggers their reverence for who he is. You see, when he takes the bread, breaks it, and blesses it, takes them back to the Last Supper. That moment at the Last Supper is what really separates Jesus from the disciples. You see, the fact that he was popular for healing the sick and the lame men were walking, those were all powerful, but they were not unique to Jesus. As a matter of fact, he told the disciples in Matthew, I've anointed you, now you go heal the sick. That's what I love about Jesus, is he wasn't intimidated by someone else walking in the same grace and the same power that he walked in. Anybody who is intimidated by that is not really being like Jesus. They're afraid, and we should pray for them, not hate on them, because they need to come to a place of abundance. Jesus had so much abundance that he had power to give. You go do it. You go heal the sick. You go do the kingdom's work. You go preach the kingdom of heaven. You go do it. You go do it. I'm pushing you forward. But there was something that he was doing that no one else could do. Last time he took the bread, blessed it, and broke it. Bruised love. This is my body that is going to be broken for you. You got to see, you got to understand the reverence for this. We weren't there, so we're a little disconnected, but you got to understand these disciples were walking with Jesus, and they were hungry for Jesus, and they respected Jesus, and they marveled at him, and they didn't want him to go anywhere, and they were willing to go to battle for him. And he says, my body that's never seen sin, my body that's never told a lie, my body, I'm gonna let him break it for everything you did, and everything you're gonna do, and everything that keeps you up in the middle of the night, making you believe that you'll never be whole again. I'm gonna let this be broken so you have another shot. I'm gonna let it be broken so your story doesn't end where that death of your childhood, the death of your innocence, the death of your hopes and dreams, your story won't end there, because I'm going to allow myself to be bruised for every lie you ever told, to be bruised for every time you ever thought you should have overdosed. I'm going to let myself be bruised for every time you felt like damaged good, for every time they touched you, for every time you did the touching. I'm going to be bruised for that. I know you're nasty. I know you did some things that were dirty, but when I get finished, I'm going to clean you all up. When I get finished, I'm gonna make you all new. When I get finished, you're gonna walk in power and authority. But the only way I can do it is if I do the thing you cannot do, and that is allow myself to be broken on behalf of someone else. He triggers their hunger, and then he triggers their reverence. And when your hunger and your reverence come together, revival breaks out. Because I'm not just hungry, I know exactly who you are. Oh God, I feel like I know exactly what you can do. I'm not just hungry. I understand what I'm hungry for. I understand who you are. I understand that demons get out of your way. I understand that cancer cannot stand in your presence. I understand that shame doesn't stand a chance. I understand who you are. God, I see you working all things out. It reminds them that Jesus did the unfathomable once. And so in the moment when they are in confusion, and the moment that they don't understand where his body could have gone, they are reminded that if he did the unfathomable once, he could do it again. He could do it again. He could. Maybe he is risen. Maybe death didn't have the final say. Maybe there's still hope after this. Maybe there's still more. Maybe that same resurrecting power could raise me up out of this confusion. Maybe the kingdom is still going to be expanded. Maybe the kingdom will still be established in our community and our culture. Maybe, just maybe. And I know that this is what changed everything. Because the moment he blessed it and broke it, he vanished. Now that you see again, now that you are reminded, now that I've elevated your consciousness, now that I've elevated your conversation, now that I have elevated you from the confusion, I can move on to someone else who needs me. I love this text because the disciples said, did our hearts not burn? Jesus, I know enough about the way God works to know that the only reason why some of you are at this altar is because at some point during this message, your heart started burning. I got triggered. I got triggered back to glory. I got triggered back to a realm of the impossible being possible. Ladies and gentlemen, my assignment for you tonight was to explain that glory has triggers too. And when we choose to walk with the Holy Spirit reveals where the glory triggers are. Something that pulls you back, not to who you once were, but to who you never even knew you could become.